How you doing, Paul?
Good morning. Can't see you yet, but nice looking picture at least.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, I've noticed that sometimes Zoom is set up with other people that your video is off.
Yes. Yeah.
That messes things up a little bit.
It certainly can.
I like your office.
Thank you. It's not done yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
what's left to do?
So there's going to be an L-shaped on this wall and this wall, and it's
Okay.
like a wooden shelf with lights down and lights up, so I could put pictures and what on top, and books and stuff in the middle, and it'll do that whole L shape right there.
Okay.
And I think I'm gonna get rid of that credenza maybe, but I may end up keeping it because I was thinking of just putting a love seat in here and that, but I may just end up keeping it there. But that means I may need to get different lamps depending on where the bookcase is.
Okay. Well, does that credenza to your right matches the filing cabinet to the left, right?
Yep. So I can just reach back here and get something off the printer. That's a little bit more for storage, but I got the whole office that's got shelving in it and whatnot. So works out pretty good.
You must do some golf since you've got Callaway there. Callaway isn't into any other sport that I know of besides golf.
Race cars. They do a package for GMC. It's the Callaway Corvette series, but yeah, they're into golf. I do play quite a bit. I used to play a lot of competitive golf with the Golf Channel, but over the last 3 years, I've had a knee replacement and a back surgery.
Oh,
So though I will be playing this year, I think it's I can actually swing a wedge. So I think he'll cut me loose probably at the end of June and I can go play. So
that sounds good.
yeah.
What did you get?
Morning.
Morning, Joe. How are you?
Always good. So, hey, Paul.
What would it take to make you excellent instead of always good?
That's a tough one. I'm not sure that's even possible.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bill, how you doing?
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you? Shit, where's my, oops, shoot, it's being recorded. How's everyone doing?
Wow.
Alive and kicking.
George swearing up a storm, man.
Yeah, I apologize humbly. No, let's see if that's the only one this morning. So,
Okay.
how's everybody doing this morning?
Good.
Excellent.
Very good.
Excellent.
Hey, George, thank you for taking the time to send me a few comments about that newsletter.
I hope it was helpful.
Well, we'll see. The big section on TSEI will disappear in 2 weeks once the spring meeting has been held. So that one will go away. Do I get any clicks out of it? It's hard to say. I don't pay much attention as I might, but I thought it might be an interesting discussion to see who all here does a monthly or a weekly or occasional newsletter and sends it out, and what do they include, not include in it. I get some from some consultants that I know, some people from the Alan Weiss community and others, and I look at some of them and decide, what I should or shouldn't put in there. So, I put out at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, a newsletter. I use Zoho Campaign. It gets sent out to a little over 6,000 people who haven't opted out. Each week, some number opt out, and I spend more time processing that I'm on vacation, I'm out on PTO, I'm traveling and won't be able to respond, I think, than I do writing the article in the thing. But that helps to
That's-
keep things up to date.
That's one thing I can help with. You can set a filter in your email that any out of office reply gets archived.
If they would be nice enough to always say out of office. They have some inventive ways of saying they're not available.
You actually also can create like almost like an info at your company name email, and then the replies from Zoho will go over into that email and it won't bog up yours, and then you can just spend time to review them later.
Okay. So who all here sends out a newsletter of any sort on LinkedIn or through a campaign?
I do Zoho also. I don't think it matters what CRM you use, but I do 2 blogs a month and shortly 2 podcasts a month.
I blog twice a month on LinkedIn, but I don't do a newsletter.
I started a newsletter a month ago, I guess.
Trend of one.
That's what it sounded like.
Well, it depends what the purpose is. If it's content and value delivery, it's a good thing. Podcasts, newsletters, LinkedIn, if it is with the expectation that it stimulates new business, my understanding is that is a lower chance of that happening.
Mhm.
Point. I've got some clients that have spent oodles of money on SEO campaigns and newsletters, and they tell me about all the opens they get. And I ask them, how much business did you get? And they say none. So
Yeah.
those are like, they're like vanity metrics. When I get so many opens, that's a vanity metric. It's not doing anything for your business. It's like, okay, that's cute.
It's interesting because
I
if you
do
think
zero
about-
direct to customer DTC marketing, 0. I don't even spend $1 on it.
Yeah.
And
It's
Joseph,
produced nothing for me through the years. So I put more effort into, Phil, the type of networking groups you're a part of, and others like the Association for Corporate Growth. I went to 2 events last week. The relationships there that happen, I cannot imagine those through centers of influence being developed in any means other than showing up
Correct.
to those type of events on a consistent basis.
Absolutely correct. It's
I'm
all
just
about
gonna-
centers of influence.
I'm going to be a contrarian since no one else is. So
shocking. Steve.
the purpose of all that newsletters posting is to build the know and potentially like, it's brand awareness. It's not the expectation that you're immediately going to turn a client.
Yep.
Steve, I
Look at it more as,
wholeheartedly disagree with you.
You're looking
100%.
to
Here we go.
Branding is effective only once you have a very large client base and you have traction, and then you can focus on branding. But if you don't have, think of Coca-Cola, right? I mean, Coca-Cola spends money on branding today, where that's where most of its marketing dollars go, not when it was building its business. So I think it's a misnomer, the concept of branding. If you have a dozen very tight relationships with centers of influence that are going to send you, 1 referral a year, that's going to be far more effective than spending all the money in the world so that the world out there knows Steve Duke, business advisors, that your name rings up the bell. Because most people, especially for the type of work that we do, they want a referral to someone that they can trust when they have to go through this process. So they're leveraging off of someone else's relationship when they want to meet you. It's very rare, or at least I've never come, maybe a couple of times in the last 6 years, where someone shows up at the door and says, "Oh, by the way, I heard great things about you on the internet or your newsletter. I really want to do business with you." It's usually an accountant or an M&A advisor, someone who you worked with beforehand that's making a referral, to someone to speak with you. And it's rarely, if ever, about the book you wrote or the newsletter you put out or anything of that nature.
well, I'm
That's
going
just my experience.
I'll agree with some of what you say, but and marketing is this channel, this channel, this channel, and this channel. And one of them is creating awareness that you exist. And that's the purpose of and building some credibility So, and that's a long game. The stuff that you're talking about is the short game. So yeah, what you're talking about is very effective, but the other has a place too. That's all I'm arguing.
Yeah, it's
Steve,
interesting.
I'll ask the question to the group. I mean, we have, we're 7, 8 people here on the call. How many people have ever received a client in all the years that they've worked off of their website or some form of marketing promotional piece that's not tied to a center of influence that they worked with?
Never.
I think I've gotten one. I do agree with Joe to a certain extent. I think most of what he's saying is correct. Most of our business is going to come from other advisors. If you can build those, I don't care, 10, 15, 20, whatever, however deep you want to go into that realm, that's kind of where they go. Though I do believe publishing blogs, posts, newsletters is a form of thought leadership. And when they're talking to their clients, LinkedIn is like the new Yellow Pages. Your website is a quasi Yellow Pages. So if you have some stuff on there that you're doing, it's certainly going to help educate that person as to, hey, you're in this business and you're doing a good job. But it does primarily come from another advisor or a business owner that you have done work with.
It's
You know,
interesting.
if I could just
Go ahead,
jump in
please,
here
Bill.
too. Go ahead, George.
No, please. I was saying, Phil, go ahead.
I had gone to a presentation put on by another business coach, and he wanted to impress on the crowd the power of social media and doing these types of things. So he said, I used to work for this restaurant and their claim to fame was cheesy French fries. He said, so I start this tweet, and he goes, you know, in a very short time, they have all these followers. He goes, what do you think of that? So I raised my hand. I said, tell me what it did for your coaching business. I mean, cheesy French fries are a transaction. We're relationship based. I said, if you really want to impress me, tell me what it did for your coaching business, not a place you don't work any longer. And, you know, again, Joe, you know, following up to your point, every client I ever have has come from a referral or, you know, meeting me, not through it. I picked up 4,500 followers on LinkedIn by blogging twice a month, and it's never generated a new piece of business. Again, thought leadership, yes, it's part of marketing, but that's not where clients come from for me.
That's why I asked
I think most people
what the
don't
purpose
understand
is.
that, you know,
If the purpose is generating thought, leadership, one of the byproducts of that is to keep us organized here. To be able to put something in writing, whether for me, it's writing articles that get published, it could be a blog, it could be whatever it might be, how you organize your information, keeps us organized. And you could use it when you do have a lead to refer to the content of what you do and how you do it. That has helped me to have someone in the bin say, hey, why don't you read an article that I have had published so you get a sense of my approach and what I do. And that has helped after.
Well, so Larry, I agree with you. If it's about helping you define your message to the public or your area of specialty so that people have a sense of who you are and what you represent, it's one thing. But I think the challenge is, you know, we are not an impulse transaction. We're not selling toothpaste or, you know, some widget or something for a couple of bucks. Everything that we do is totally about the relationship. So B2B is very different than B2C marketing. We're not in the B2C marketing world, and most of the marketing stuff that's out there is really geared on selling something to a consumer for an impulse transaction. Even if it's $1,000 or $2,000 or even, you know, $50,000 Tesla, that's not where we are. So
Well,
that type of marketing doesn't work for our space.
Joseph, I'd say I'd amend your statement that most of the stuff out there that works is more transaction. There's a lot of stuff out there like people like us trying to do it, but I don't think it works for people like us because it is
Right.
relationship based.
Correct. Yeah,
Well,
we're not a
what-
transaction-based business.
Phil, what are you doing with the podcasts? That takes a lot of effort. And where does it go? And are you seeing response from it?
Blogs, you mean? I don't podcast.
Was it Vincent? Did you say you podcast?
I do.
So tell us about that and what you're getting from that and stuff.
I use it only as a reference back, so it is geared towards advisors and owners. one to build some relationships with the advisors. Most owners I don't think they really, though they may have a LinkedIn page, not many of them spend that much time, especially like manufacturing, construction, which is where mostly I work. So anyhow, but I just use it more as thought leadership. I can send it to an advisor. To the point made earlier, if there is an owner say, hey, I think you may want to check out this podcast, I can send them a short link and then they can go into the site and look at the rest of it. So it's kind of like, hey, I've already met them, but I've met them through somebody. All of our business has always come from other owners that we've done work for, or advisors, CPAs, wealth managers, a couple of M&A/broker people, and then now some risk managers are starting to get us into some cases. So that's where, and then a lot of it also is doing some speaking, like panel discussions or just workshops or whatever. But those also have advisors included with it too. So that's where it's coming from.
Well, going back to Steve Duke's comment then, at least for me, it's keeping my name and my business aware of to people for me across the United States.
Right.
Because I'm not just local with what I do. And an example, so I went to a local machine tool show, manufacturing, pure and simple. Okay. And so I mined all of this yesterday. There was not a single business owner of any of these companies that were showing at the thing. So I used Zoom Info to get the names, figure out if they were in my ideal client profile or not. And now I have to reach out to them somehow. It's going to be partially through that newsletter, because that's something that gets into their email box, and they might click on it once or twice and begin to get an awareness that I exist. The other is to make a phone call to them, and it's really a cold call. Semi-warm. Okay, I know you had some people at this show, but you weren't there yourself, because business owners never go to the shows.
Correct.
They don't go to the Association for Corporate Growth either.
Right.
It's all insurance, banking, right? CPA firms. It's all the service firms that service those businesses.
Right.
It's interesting that you say that, Larry, because this goes back a few years, but I joined a group on LinkedIn, and you had to apply and you get admitted, and it was a CEO group. And I figured out very, very quickly, guess how many CEOs were in there? I know there were members, but who were they doing anything in there? It was essentially all guys like us looking for CEOs. And yeah.
So, I have actually an interesting question for you, Paul. I know that everyone, or Paul, Steve, whoever, anybody in the group, a lot of time and effort spent on marketing to business owners. How many phone calls do you make to your top 5 centers of influence every month?
I don't want to answer that on the grounds that it may tend to incriminate me.
Yeah, so if you called them once a month, at least once a month, and said, how are things? What are your problems? What are you struggling with? How can I help you? What can I do for you? If you did that every single month, even if they didn't have, anything anything that you could help them with, when someone comes in through that door that fits your profile, who do you think they're going to be thinking about?
That's great advice, Joseph.
I agree with Joe.
If you have 30 or 40 of those guys, or even if you had, let's say you compiled a list of 50 guys like that, and you called one a week, and you spend an hour or two just trying to see if you can find a solution for that guy.
I talked to a sales outsourcing organization in Milwaukee the last month and a half or so, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with sales accelerants.
Yeah.
So that's his primary customer. So he's basically got 200 sales accelerants members, and he calls each one of them quarterly. It's a lot of phone calls. Or, you might have to leave a message for them and stuff, but a lot of phone calls, just him trying to make sure that he stays top of mind with them in that particular fashion.
So let me let me introduce something completely different as far as it comes with finding potential prospects. So a buddy of mine has a bar and he wants to sell, attract the male audience, right? But he says it's about the artists. So what do you mean about the artists? If the artists bring the women bring the men. So as we start thinking further upstream with our CEO clients, what's bringing them out? What attracts them? What is that? What is that bit of pollen that we could be paying attention to? Because it's a critical few, right? I mean, we don't need that many first, and there is not. It's a limited, and we don't need the operations guy. We don't need the finance guy. We don't talk to the main guy, and they do a really good well of hiding themselves and playing very low profile. But where is that artist in your client's life, and how do you get to understand what that is?
Whiskey and cigars, Joe. Whiskey and cigars.
For some,
Well,
yeah.
I happen to be at my cigar club right now, and I'm getting ready to a little coffee and maybe burn a cigar here.
You laugh, George. My son's job that he has now with Bank of America in business banking is because he developed a whiskey and cigar networking group 2 years ago and met people. In fact, this Thursday, I think some of them are getting together. But yeah, I know you were joking, but it actually works for some.
Oh, I wasn't joking. I know Joe does the.
Yeah, I host every 6 months. We have, or 6 weeks, we have a group of, I have an invite list of about 50, and any given week, 25 show up. And it's all about what we're trying to do is give their client an experience that they couldn't get somewhere else. And a rare occasion with the smoking ban and all that, you can't necessarily smoke inside a cigar and have a bourbon. So I actually have my network COIs bring in the bottles to share, and I provide the food. And then there's a cover charge from the cigar shop, but I let them buy their client's cigars. So think about, you're setting the stage for an engagement with your clients that they can get nowhere elsewhere. And oh, by the way, no assholes there, and no, direct soliciting going on, right? So it's kind of crude. It's kind of like, but it works. And people I see out professionally, oh man, I wanted to come to your event the other night. Maybe I'll catch the next one. So, and then people bring their customers, and then it expands from there. So, how do you create an experience environment where the artists are there and it brings the CEOs out? And in a trusting environment where, your center of influences feel comfortable bringing out their clients, and, truly understanding that this is a non-solicitation type event. So I don't know, it works for me.
You skipped over the women. It's the cigar and the brandy. That's the pollen
Yes.
that brings
Perfect.
them in.
Yes. Yeah. And so what is that? I didn't say, so what is that artist? I mean, and then the artist bring the CEO, and then, and then you're the male, right? You're trying to find.
It sounds like a good old fashioned 1700s private club, private men's club.
It's not, it's it's partial private and then partial retail. So kind of works out.
Interesting.
The thing that I find is that we got to get these people away from chopping the wood, right? And you got to get them in a relaxed state, and the relaxed environment opens their mind to different outlets. But when they're in the public eye or in that game mode, chopping wood, you're just better off just not even trying. In my experience.
That's something I'd like to build on what Joe just said. An event that has a proven track record of success, guys, and it's the CEO workshop marketing event where you get your COIs to bring a client or two to a room. And Larry, you've done this. I don't know if anyone else here has. I've done a bunch of them. I've helped, I get on a plane and fly out and help you guys do this. and then you use Clarity with the room full of CEOs to showcase. Actually, I'm helping John Foster put on a 3-hour event right now. He actually has a series of them he's doing with Vistage groups. But we get the CEOs in the room, get them away from work, to Joe's point, and get them to go through. So then what we want to do is make them self-identify as having a problem. And we have a bunch of choices. If you stand at the front of the room doing a chalk and talk, that's one approach. Here's the expertise I have. If it sounds relevant, great. But if you do use a tool like Clarity, you get them self-identifying and seeing that they have problems, and they have the opportunity to put up their hand. Especially in groups like a Vistage group, it's especially effective because they're inside the circle of trust, right? They all know each other's dirty laundry. But even in rooms with strangers, you're going to get people warm up and they start saying, well, actually, I'm interested in what you just said about having an effective senior leadership team. And I find that I can't take any time off from the work. Could you talk about that? And these things convert, but you get them away from work. You always do these events first thing in the morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock, because if not, they'll be chopping wood and say, I'm too busy, and get it done. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to ask that the thing you're doing with John, is that essentially level 1 Clarity on steroids for 3 hours?
It's so yes. So there's a hour and a half and a 3-hour version. The hour and a half version is just level 1 analysis, and you go through the strategic capacity report. At the 3-hour version, you also go through the range of values conversation and the equity value planning module. So we bring the whole thing, we're having the full conversation, and it's packed, but at the end and this is encircled. If anybody's interested, the resources are encircled. There's a deck with speakers notes. There's a survey for the end. There's, how to make sure you set up the room. Things have changed dramatically since we first started doing it. Like, we used to have to make sure we tested the Wi-Fi to make sure there was enough connectivity. These days, you should still check, but it's generally adequate. But
how are you doing the equity thing, George? Just running one person through it?
Nope, people can go through it right there, put in, you just walk them through the module, and then say, okay, well, guys, here we are up on the Jumbotron, and if you don't have a Jumbotron, you can do it with handouts. I mean, but here you are on the Jumbotron. So in this case, in the case we have up on the board, Pam is trying to replace $500,000 of the revenue. Here's the growth rate she's going to have to be. So you can look down on you just walk them through their report. So they're starting to form questions. We're trying to intrigue them, right? We can't lecture them into hiring us, but we can intrigue them into asking for more information. So sorry to get on my soapbox, but
I've run 5 of those workshops. One led to business. I have 2 clients, and they're also in the CEO peer group from one of those workshops. 2 were in Connecticut, 2 were in Ohio, virtual. They did not lead to a business, but the one here locally in New Jersey has.
The live event?
They were all in person. The 3 of the 5 were in person. The 2 in Ohio were virtual, but they're very well received. And you're right. I think the good point is that when you get a Vistage group together, they already have trust in the room. So they're willing to share what other business owners who don't know might not be willing to share. And that openness leads to some really good discussions. Vistage puts a lot of restrictions on what you can and cannot do as a follow-up. So you gotta kind of have the right chair to work with. In the case of Ohio, I didn't. In the case of Connecticut, it was a little sheepish about it. New Jersey was do whatever you want.
I found the same thing, Larry.
Yeah, you meet one chair after being 20 years in the organization, 10 as a member and 10 as a chair. What I thought really worked well, and we actually had Ed come into I brought Ed in as when I was a Vistage chair, brought Ed in early on to our group to present, and he had a very little response rate. One guy reached out, and it kind of looks like the problem is, and I felt like an enabler as a Vistage chair. And what it explained that a little bit more as an enabler. I was bringing resources in month after month. And I was wanting to kick out the resources again early because we really needed more time together to kind of, so if you were focused on something that really value is to open the dialogue between each other in a very open kimono way. So imagine, if you will, George, you're doing the audience and then you're sharing it with your neighbor and you're taking some assumed confidentiality, but it will do better for them, for the owner, because oftentimes they show up and they're kind of, they wasn't until like I've been talking to the owner about a problem for 2 or 3 months, but he hasn't brought it to the group, right? So how you can help the chair, and this is really understanding it's a reciprocity agreement between the chair and you. When it works well, is that you're helping the owner identify things and then ultimately almost forced to share the data in a data, analysis, like everything. If you were to have one piece that would, what Ed did in his world, he took all the results from that. There in that time it was, I don't know, whatever it was, clarity results, but he amalgamated it on as a group, right? And understood that, there's $1 billion here or whatever the number was. And then here's what's sitting on the table. And now each person, and this is where the trust goes up, is that you actually report out on each one and you give them their report, but then on a graph, you have everybody together. And that tends to really bring out the really a high level conversation between where they're going with the business and what metrics they're trying to do and how they could be growing their business, and then maybe why are you here if you're not wanting to grow your business, right? So it sort of smokes out some really hard conversations. If you can get there, then you get some deep work with the chair. You leave the chair plenty of work to do, and he comes back with a good recommendation to you. And then, hey, 1 out of 10 maybe hit rate, but that one, imagine the people that are out there discipling for you within the chair group. And the beautiful part about it, if that guy's doing it and the group sees him doing it and sees it, his peer group, that is really, that's magical.
Well, and one of the techniques, one of the tools you can use is at the end, and we've seen this be very effective, is make sure you have a survey that's sitting on the table. You point it out at the beginning, you point it out at the middle, you point it out at the end, fill in your survey. I'm going to come around and collect them. When you say I'm going to come around and collect them, it makes them accountable to you. You come and you get the survey, and on the survey, there's a box. Yes, I'd like to learn more. And then the one that stands out in my mind in Philadelphia was a room full of 25 strangers, right? And it was a really well put on event. Rob Waring, some of you guys will know him from the community. He's an M&A advisor out of Philly. And but if memory serves, it was 23 of 25 had circled it. Yes, I'd like to learn more, which gives you at least a reason to call. They got some business out of it. But that's just one way. And to go to Joseph's point, if you've built an ongoing relationship with your COIs and they're talking to you routinely, you're touching base, you're delivering value, you have a network, not that you can tap on a monthly basis, but several times a year, maybe quarterly, you can put on these events and have enough people in seats in the room for it to be a worthwhile event. Yeah, but it all comes back. I'd like to circle this back around, if we might. Blogging, writing articles, sending out social posts. From my perspective, now we're in a different game, right? So I'm talking to you guys and I'm talking to your colleagues, and that's a different game. Talking to CEOs, it is, they can come to your website or go to your LinkedIn profile and see that you've been active and see that you're focused. And that kind of comes back to the power of niching, right? They see that you're working, and even if they're not, if they're not in your niche, they may identify themselves in and say, oh, Larry does know about blank. They're just looking for confidence, right? They already know that they trust Barry. Barry has said to talk to Larry. Fantastic. They're going to go and do a little due diligence. And that history, it seems to me, simply validates the referral. I would agree that you're not going to get a ton of people putting their hand up, because CEOs, think of your own inbox, right? CEOs feel like a pincushion, and they feel like if they put their hand up, they're going to get inundated. And they're not wrong, because that's how we universally treat them. Hey, you're a CEO. Wham. Okay, there's end of my diatribe. Andy?
George, just to bring it back a bit, where will you find those resources reference clarity in Circle? Under what are the sub-menu?
Momentito, I will tell you right now.
Momentito, wow.
What was Momentito? What was that from? Was that it could be a Seinfeld. All right.
I think it was.
Take care, Phil. Oh, he left.
Phil's gone.
Yeah.
Well, for crying out loud, why am I not using the search bar, right?
What's up with it? Come on, George, it's your tool.
The workshop. This is funny.
So I guess then the consensus is that we want to have whatever number of centers of influence, as I call them, in your sales funnel. I'll just use that as terminology, that you're touching base with on the frequency you feel you need to, educating them, talking with them, coffee with them, etc., to have them get in, have them help you walk into a business owner client, and also helping them with their business, right? So whether it's a wealth manager to get more assets under management, insurance, etc., a CPA to potentially bill more time to do some additional work, attorneys the same, M&A, business broker, investment banker / private equity group to help sell the company. I think I got everybody there, right? And as a risk manager, certainly for those business owners that are looking to keep and grow the business or just make it easier to run. For the ones that are selling, it still would work, but certainly they're going to they risk losing the client altogether.
Yeah. All right, guys, I need to make this far more visible than it is, and I will take care of that as soon as we hang up. On my priority on a long list, simplified circle.
Just to take that a little further, and I'm reflecting on my experience and with the Vistage group, and it would be really interesting if you could do a deep dive with one of those companies in the afternoon and get permission to play and really kind of deep dive into that particular, kind of talk to the chair and say, would you like to have a free consultation with one of the members and go and experience the deep dive with that group? So the group, it'd be one guy, because everybody's got their turn in a fish barrel, we call it, so, it's your turn in the barrel, and, bring it on, and there's certain members that are really, here's the important part is that oftentimes the resources are trying to get to your leadership team, and we're not necessarily want to go to leadership team. We're okay talking to the owner about owner involved issue. Now, ultimately, we need to, address the leadership team issues, but think about that as a follow-on, George, especially in the Vistage space, you could get that accomplished. And if somebody wants to play along, it wouldn't be much to at least go through those questions, and then really have the members chime in and their fellow members, and oh, I know, no, that's not right. You're being too hard on yourself, because they typically will know the other businesses pretty well. To be able to answer that, into the deep dive questions. Somewhat open kimono, but you know, if that trust exists, it might be a really cool exercise to see it in action. But then again, the other rule of thumb is leave them wanting more. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great idea, John. Even more powerful if you set it up beforehand. So you
Right.
work with the chairman to say, look, we as part of this process, we'll give a free whatever. Who you think is a good member? Go to the member, do the free deep dive, and then run the clarity, and
Right.
then get the guy to talk about how great it was. You know, the
Right.
next step was really great. Learned a lot from it. You have to prime them a bit. Nothing worse than setting that up and the guy says one sentence. But that's another very powerful way of influence. Yeah.
just an idea. Or even just a follow-up, you know, they're typically you'll rotate members will come in and they'll have an hour, half an hour, hour and a half presentation on themselves in the afternoon when it's just the girls together. And so you could somehow spar with that a little bit and say, hey, so next month we're going to have, you know, I'm going to give 2 hours of consultation time away to one individual. And, you know, we're going to either draw for it or, you know, however we select it. And then I'm going to report out the findings of this particular. So the continuity between the meetings, I think would be really cool too. And you say commit to 2 hours, you know, the gain of you got the awareness, but now you actually got a product and the person's reflecting, like Andy said, about his experience. That's winner. That's a winning combination for 2 hours of, you know, so you got some time prep for the fisting stick itself, but you know, that's the marketing effort I see has really has some really legs to it versus spending a lot of time on social. But there's a lot of other peer groups in your community. You have no idea. Everybody focuses on Vistix, but there's a ton of other Catholic peer group, even Christian peer groups. There's a lot of peer groups out there. So, you know, this is just one model. So
I think any group you want to go to, I think you're right, Joe, whether it's a group or an association, or any other collaboration with groups, you can meet people, meet advisors, meet owners. And I think it works, whether you use Clarity, Value Builder, or something else. If you have something that can be done I actually told a guy, well, Joe, you should have cigars for all of us if you're going to lay a cigar. So, but you're muted. But I told a person the other day that I met at, see now Larry's got the bourbon out. Here we go. We're going down the sewer at 9:30 in the morning.
And I was going to discuss our summit. Maybe instead of a summit, we should have.
I told a business owner I met at a manufacturing association meeting a couple weeks ago, and he owns a big RV center, and he literally told me ahead of time. We started talking. He said, yeah, I've got my exit plan. I want to be out in 5 years. I chatted with him a little bit. We exchanged cards. We eventually chatted a couple more times during that event because it was a half-a-day event. And the vice president of the group is his best friend, and I know him really well. So he kind of gave us a good plug. And so I actually called him yesterday early, and he called me back on a meeting I had with Joe, and he was nice enough to hold on while I finished the call. But he wants to get out, and I told him I needed 14 minutes to complete a very high-end brief questionnaire assessment to kind of give him a value of the ranges and where he's at, what his strategic capacity may look like, and how it could help him get to the number that he's looking for in 5 years, and even if that's possible. And so he told me one of two things. He said, yes, I'd be willing to meet with you, but the only reason I'm even talking to you is because you are a good friend of Mike's, and he is one of my best friends. Otherwise, you would have not even gotten a return phone call.
Wow.
I said, so you're telling me my face for radio would not have been good enough to chat with me for a little bit afterwards, right? You're muted, Joe.
You're muted, Joe.
You're muted, Joe.
So here's another model. Ed and I are doing a event where the CPA firms bringing all their clients in the morning and we're golfing in the afternoon. He's going to do 1 hour on his topic, and we're going to do 1 hour on the clarity or EOS, and then one on clarity. So 3 hours are getting nuggets on each one. And then those who choose to go for golfing later will do that. And then they're paying for everything. The CPA firm, because what they're trying to do is get in front of their clients more frequently and be their strategic person, right? So you think about what are some of your center of influence's goals is we want to create the experience, we want to give them timely material. They don't want to be hassled by, you know, having to filter out who's going to follow up and do the work, but giving them the format like George is working on now for, you know, the 1.5 hour to 3 hours, that becomes a really good marketing piece for them to get their clients exposed to different ways of thinking, and in essentially showcases their ability to bring a realistic, you know, good common current things to the marketplace, and we help.
Yeah,
Oh,
we lost
there
Barry.
it went. I didn't push him off the edge. All right, listen, guys, I actually have to scoot here in a minute. Great conversation. Yep, you're muted, Larry.
Let's talk about the summit next week, since we're out of time
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, guys. So, and I'll post in the community. We're putting together the summit. It is tentatively, and I'm talking to hotels on November 6th, 7th, and 8th. With the certification being a month earlier in October, and so we'll talk about that next week. Ideas for what you would value as an experience, as an event. What would you like to learn? What would you like to do? So if you have suggestions, it will probably not be at the venue because we're anticipating more people than that room will hold. And but I've got a couple of other cool opportunities. So food for thought.
Okay.
And all right, guys.
All right. Have a good week,
Any
everybody.
questions before we go? All right, great. Everybody have a great week.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Andy, I see your question. Let's do it. Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
And you.
Bye.